Okay, so here we have the basic parts that I used to create the tracks in the physics playground video. What these are basically just a very simple little track shape, and then on top of all of them are an array and simple to form modifier. So if I expand this array modifier here, I have the count of this one set to about 70, which the count refers to how many times that object is repeated. And then you can control the direction in which the object is repeated here. So if I click on the little eye icon of my array modifier, it will turn off the visibility, and then on top of that we just have the simple to form modifier. So if I click its effect off also, we'll see that the base object here is just a very simple track shape. If I turn the visibility of the array modifier back on by clicking this eye, then we can see at the first level here of the array, we just have the count being increased, which increases the number of times that simple object is repeated, and the direction is controlled here. And then if I turn the visibility of the simple to form modifier back on, we see how that is then treating that whole big array as one object, and then going on to the next step of bending it. In the simple to form modifier, I'm using the setting of bend for all of these, but there's a little special preparation that has to go in how you actually rotate and move the actual mesh. Beyond that, we need to have our object selected, and you see it's highlighted in green there. When it's highlighted in green, that means that a rigid body effect has been added to it. So after building it, you would want to click it and just select Add Passive and make sure that you change the shape to Mesh. Otherwise, the ball or marble or whatever you have going down the track isn't going to fit into the grooves of the track here. So if I were to click play right now, we'll see the ball falls straight through it. And that's because the physics aren't taking into account the modifiers on top of our object. So we have two options. We can either, one, apply both the array and the simple to form modifier. And if we do that, then we can hit play and the ball will now go down the track. Hit pause and go back. Or there's a much better option which allows us to be able to freely modify, change, and work on our objects as we're designing them and still have them be able to work physics when we hit play. We can just go over to our physics tab here, and under rigid body collisions, under the source type, we change that to final. So what this is saying is, dear Blender, please consider all the effects of this object I'm working on after running it through all the modifiers. And then you can click play and be able to update and change your object there. So let's go to File, New, Reload Startup File. The easiest way to make this base track would just be to select this default cube here and go into front view. That's press 1 if using Sensei format, or you can just go to View and Front, and then we can hit Tab to go into edit mode, and tap M, which brings up our merge menu here, and we want to select at center. And what that just did was merge all of the points in that cube into one single vertex point. So we can either come down here and select vertex selection, or just shift scroll down for vertex selection using Sensei format. Hit 1 to go back into the front view, and tap A to select the point there, and then hit E to extrude. And you can see now we've extruded a line from that single vertex point. And if we hold Control now, we can then snap this to the grid. So this is like having graph paper to sit here and trace out the shape we want for our track. So I'll just move this over about 3 blocks down here, hit E to extrude again, hold Control, and E to extrude again, hold Control, and I'm just going to keep hitting E to extrude and Control to snap it to the grid, and E to extrude, and E to extrude, Control, E to extrude to about right here would be fine, E to extrude down here. And then I'm going to stop there. So I have this gap between here and here, but I actually want these 2 points to be connected here and here to be connected. So I'm going to select this middle vertex point here and tap X Sensei format to delete it, or Control X or delete otherwise. And then you can tap A to select all, and then tap F if using Sensei format to fill, or you can go to Mesh, Faces, Fill. And now we can change selection to face mode or tap space and hit E to extrude and make ourselves a small track piece here. Now we can hit tab to go back into object mode, and we can go over here and select add modifier and mirror, or we can just tap shift W if using Sensei format. Then we want to go into the top view, tap tab to go back into edit mode, tap A to select everything, and then G to grab, hold middle mouse to constrain, and this way we can pull apart our track piece just a little bit to where our ball will fall into the groove there. I'm going to hit tab to go back into object mode, and on top of this I'm going to add a bevel modifier and bring it up to 2, decrease its width to about 0.03 or 0.04, and then hit T to go into my tools, and under tools select smooth shading, so I've got my track there. So now I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode, and what I want to do is make sure I'm in face selection here and select the back of the track and hit X to delete it, and then select the front of the track and hit X to delete that. And I want to delete those 2 faces because when we add the array modifier, it will be repeating this object basically over and over and over. So we don't want unnecessary faces in between the actual track because the shape will be repeating. So the other thing we need to do is actually add some cuts to this. If you're just making straight up and down tracks, it looks fine, but as soon as they start to bend, then the simple deform modifier will be trying to bend these shape pieces without very much geometry to work with, and that will also look really choppy and bad. So either Sensei format, tap shift W, and then scroll the mouse up about 7 or 8 times, should be fine, and then double click to confirm that. Or I believe you can do that by hitting T to get in your tools, and under mesh tools you can select loop cut and slide there. And if you let your mouse hover, you can also see what the shortcut for that is, or you can right click and add a shortcut. We've got our starter piece here. Let's hit tab to go back into object mode. Let's go ahead and rename this. We'll double click on this and call this track. Hit enter. Next, add an array modifier. So our array modifier goes on here, and if we increase the count, we see it moving along like that, and that's not really the direction we want. So what we can do is change this X offset here from 1, click on it and select 0, and then we can increase this to 1, our Y, and it doesn't really matter which direction you go. And so now we have a repeating track. So if I increase the count, then we're increasing the length of our track, which is good. Okay, so now would be a good time to go ahead and make sure this is working how we want. So let's tap Shift A and add a cube, and tap W to give a subdivision surface and smoothing if using Sensei format. If not, go to Add Modifier, Subdivision Surface, T for your tools. Under Tools, select Smooth. And let's increase the subdivisions up to about 3 there, and for the render also. Hit G to grab, middle mouse to constrain, and set it about right there. Then we can hit T to bring up our tools. And under Physics, we can select Add Active for this cube, which now looks like a sphere. We want to change its shape to sphere so that Blender considers its physics to be like a sphere shape. Then we can select our track and select Add Passive, and we want to make sure that we set its collision shape here to Mesh so that the ball is able to fit into the grooves and it's considering all of that. So we can hit T to dismiss our tools and tap play, and as soon as we do, we see the ball fall straight through the track, which is not good. So we hit our back button to go back. So to get Blender to consider the physics after all of these modifiers, we go to our physics tab, having our track piece selected here, and we want to, under rigid body collisions, make sure source is set to final. And now when we hit play, we see that the ball fits snugly right into the track, and actually it's a really nice fit there. Okay, so we've got this straight piece pretty much mapped out, and we can use this as the base for any time we are needing a straight piece or a piece that we plan on rotating and say have going downhill or something. And of course we can, under the modifier tab under array, we can increase the length of that as far as we want. We might want to, under our bevel modifier, turn off the visibility of that while in the 3D view. So we can just click the eye to turn that off while we're working and leave the render pressed down, and so whenever we go to render our image or animation, it will look nice, but while we're working in the 3D view, we have a lot more resources to play with. At this point, we should probably go ahead and start devoting a certain layer to where our pieces are going to go. And so we might just hit D to duplicate this track piece, and then right click, which cancels the movement and puts that new duplicated piece exactly on top of what it was duplicated from. So you see now we have track and track 0.001. And we might go ahead and double click on this new duplicate and go ahead and call it straight track. Hit enter, and then we could tap M and then move it to a bottom layer here. And so now basically in this layer here, when we click on it, we have our first piece to use in the assembly of whatever we plan on making. And then so we can click back on the first layer and begin to turn this into something else, like a curve or something. So now we're ready to go ahead and add a simple to form modifier. So let's click add modifier and select simple to form. And as soon as we do, we see it's not really the results we want. So we can come over here and select bend, tap 5 to go into top view, and then we need to tap tab to go into edit mode and hit R to rotate this and hold control to constrain like that until it looks like that. Come over here now to the array and change this offset. The Y offset is no longer what we need, so let's click 0 for that and then increase the X offset here. And it's starting to look a little closer to what we want, but not quite right. So in addition to that, we're also going to have to select our mirror modifier and change its axis to the Y axis. So now when we go to look at the object, it looks more correct. So I can close that up. I want to increase this offset all the way till it's completely 1, because we want each object being placed exactly the length of one more additional object. You see if I increase that offset any, then it begins to break there. So we close that, close up our array, and open up our simple to form. Now we can change the angle however we want, and we have extremely smooth, good looking tracks that will work really amazingly. So let's go ahead and name this, double click and name this new piece curved track. Okay, let's go ahead and come down here and press play to see how this is working. We see that the ball isn't really moving, so we can actually tap R to rotate this track piece here, and you can see that it works, but it's acting like it's running over something there, which is not good. So we'll hit pause and hit the back button and then press Control Z to undo the movements we did while it was playing. And what's actually happening there, if we click on this other layer where we're storing our straight track piece, is that even though the layer isn't selected at the same time, which you can do by holding shift and selecting, even though it doesn't appear to be in there, any object that you have in another layer, its physics will bleed through, will actually have an effect despite it not showing up or rendering. So what we need to do is just come down here and select our track and hit G to grab and just move it out of the way while we're testing this piece right here. So we select this and we select that, and then we press play, and we see now the ball moves smoothly, though not very fastly because it's on a flat plane, but the second we tap R to rotate this, you can see it affecting it there. So I'll hit stop and then the back button and then Control Z to undo my movements there until this is all flat and good. Let's go ahead and hit D to duplicate this one, then right click to put it back right where it was. Press M to move, and we'll move it into our layer that we are using to store our pieces here. I'll tap 5 to go into top view and G to grab, and I'm just going to move this, and I'm actually going to hit B to border select and grab both these and move them just a ways away so their physics doesn't affect what I'm working on. And select here. And okay, so we've got this curve down pack, but the next thing we really need to be able to do is to have the track bend. Okay, so do you remember the old fold a dollar in half trick to make it appear upside down and right side up? So a little bit of that is actually going to be going on. We're able to currently change the angle like this for our curved piece, but if we want it to like bow downward or curl up like for say a loop or something, we're not able to do that. So what we actually have to do is come to our mirror modifier and we need to apply that, go into our left view, and then I'm going to actually hit R to rotate this and Control to constrain, and I'm going to rotate the whole track going down vertically like that, and then hit Tab to go into edit mode, and then hit R to rotate it again and hold Control like this to constrain it and get it to rotate flat. And you see now we've switched it up. So if I hit Tab to go back into object mode, we can now change the angle of this however we want. And of course we can increase its length by increasing or decreasing the count of the array. That was a pretty simple fix compared to the others. Hit D to duplicate that and right click to get it back to where it was, and tap M to move it to our layer where we're keeping all our pieces here, and I'll hit 5 to go into top view and G to grab and move it over here. And I didn't name the other one previously, so let's select that one and let's call it curved track, and let's call this one bent track, I suppose. And then so we can click back in our main layer here. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring this all together. So actually I'm going to, in this first layer here, I'm going to select this piece and hit X to delete it, and I'm going to go back to my second layer here, and I'm just going to tap A to select everything and hit M and then move it all back into the first layer and then click back on there. And then I'm going to shift select my ball and tap 5 and hit G to move these back over a little closer. Actually, let's click on this ball here and rename it from cube by clicking on it to just call it ball. We might want to start with the first track here. I'll hit 5 to go into top view, G to grab, move this over here. Say we want this, set that up to about 30 or something. And then we could go into left view and I could hit R to rotate it and G to grab. And then I would want one of my bent tracks. I'd hit 5 to go into top view, and I want to go ahead and hit D to duplicate it, R to rotate, and Control to constrain to where it rotates flatly, and then 4 to go back into left view, G to grab and rotate this around. And basically what I would want to do is just get this angle set up to where I can go back into another straight piece basically. I can, under my array for this object, decrease the count quite a bit and hit R to rotate that again because I need this bit to be straight to meet with another flat piece of track. And now I'm just going to go ahead and click this original piece and hit G to grab it and R to rotate it so that I can get it to flush up with this track right here. And we're not going to spin forever getting these perfect, but that's pretty good. Hit 5 to go into top view, G to grab, and move it over. And once you're done with your entire track, you can join all these pieces together by shift selecting them and tapping J, and then you can work with their mesh. So it's like this piece, 4 to go back in the left view, D to duplicate it. Then I'm actually going to tap Alt R, which resets the object's rotation and location, so we get it flat again. Make this one zoom in on here and get this one to meet up with this one. I may select this one, maybe I don't want that going quite that long, and decrease its length a bit. And maybe after it gets right there, then it decides to curve, so I'd hit 5 to go into top view, and hit D to duplicate this piece, and R to rotate it like this, and bend its angle quite a bit, and G to grab there to move it down, 4 to go in the left view, zoom in on it, and hit G to grab, make sure I'm getting it pretty good there. And like I said, once you're done with designing your track, you can select all these, join them, and then edit the individual little splices if you're having trouble there. Maybe we want it to bend down again, so I'd hit 5 to go into top view, D to duplicate my bend piece, then hit G to grab my little bend piece here, tap 3 to go into right view, G to grab it, I'm going to tap Z, and I could go ahead and switch its angle to go down like that, and rotate it, and that's going down too far, so let's change that to like that, and let's increase the count of this quite a bit, and rotate that, and we can tap X to constrain it to the X-axis, and 3 to go into right view, Z for wireframe so we can see where I'm meeting up here. Rotate that again. Five to go into top view. G to grab and move this over so it meets flush. And so far, so good. This is going to be our little simple track here, but you see how you can mix these pieces together and make a big track. So I'm going to actually select this piece here and tap Alt-Shift, right-click to move my 3D cursor up to this object's origin point if you're in Sensei format. If you're not, I don't remember what the shortcut for that is. And then I'm going to select my ball and tap Shift right-click, which moves my object to the place of the 3D cursor. Or you can just move your ball over there and hit G to grab, middle mouse to constrain, and bring it up there a little bit. And so we can tap play and see what this looks like so far. There it goes around there, and oh no, boom, falls right off the corner. So what do we do about that? Well, what we can do is select this piece here, and under the Physics tab, under Rigid Body Collision, we can increase its friction so that the ball gets slowed down around that corner there. And it's still going off a bit, so we may actually want to select this piece and increase its friction also so it gets slowed down even more. And there, makes it, and back into there. And of course we can decrease the friction wherever we want the speed to increase or decrease for our ball. So that's about all we're going to cover on this for right now. We've already covered quite a bit. Check out the example files that you can download in the description if you need a reference for something.